So let's talk about management. You hear that word thrown around all the time, right? In business, on the news, maybe even at your own job. But have you ever stopped to think about what it actually means? Is it just a task you do? Is it the people in the corner offices? Or is it that major you can get in college? Well, the truth is, it's kind of all of those things, and a little more. Let's really dig in and unpack this.
To really wrap our heads around what management is, we're going to look at it through 4 totally different lenses. Think of it like looking at a diamond from different angles. Each view shows you a new facet. We'll look at it as an action, then as a team, then as a field of study, and finally as a system. After we've explored all 4, we'll put them all together to see the whole complete picture.
All right, first up, let's look at management as an action. This is probably the most direct, hands-on way to think about it, and the subtitle here really nails it. Management is the art of getting things done. So what's the core idea here? Well, at its absolute heart, management is the art of achieving goals, not by doing all the work yourself, but by coordinating and guiding the efforts of other people. The classic analogy is a symphony conductor. Right? The conductor doesn't play a single note, but their actions, their direction, their timing are what bring together the talents of dozens of musicians to create this incredible unified piece of music. That is management in its purest form. So, what are the actual ingredients a manager is working with? Well, this diagram lays out what's often called the 5 M's of management. First, you've got manpower. That's the people, their skills, their effort. Then, materials, the actual physical stuff you need. You've got machinery, your tools, your technology. Then there's methods, the processes and the how-to for getting things done. And of course, money, the fuel for the entire engine. A manager's real magic is taking these 5 distinct inputs and weaving them together into one productive, functioning enterprise. So if we think of management as an action, what does that really imply? Well, it tells us 4 really important things. First, it's an interpersonal activity. You just can't manage in a vacuum. It's all about interacting with people. Second, it's a group activity. You're not just dealing with individuals one-on-one, you're orchestrating a whole team. Third, it's got to be goal-oriented. All this activity has to be pointing toward a specific outcome. And finally, it is a decisional activity. At the end of the day, managers have to make choices, all day, every day, to keep things moving forward. Okay, let's switch gears. We've just talked about the what of management. Now let's talk about the who. Our second lens looks at management as a team, the actual people who are in charge. When we talk about management as a group, what we really mean is every single person who has a managing role in that organization. It's a collective noun. Think about the crew on a giant spaceship. The crew isn't just the captain. No way. It's everyone responsible for making that ship fly, from the captain on the bridge to the navigators to the engineers in the engine room, right down to the shift supervisors. They are all part of the crew. It's the same thing with management in a company. And here's a little nuance that actually trips a lot of people up. The term management can mean 2 different things. Broadly speaking, technically, it means every single manager, from the CEO all the way down to the person supervising the front line. But in common practice, when you hear someone say, I have to get this approved by management, they're almost always talking about the top brass, the senior leadership. So it's good to know it has both this super broad, all-inclusive definition and a much narrower, everyday one. So who are these people, really? Well, they often fall into one of 3 camps. First, you've got your family managers. These are the folks who are in charge because they either own the company or they're related to the owners. Then you have professional managers. These are the people hired for their skills and qualifications. The ones with the fancy degrees and years of experience. And finally, you have civil servants, who are the managers running our public sector organizations, like government agencies. And make no mistake, this management group as a whole carries some serious weight. In society, top managers are often seen as a powerful elite because, well, their decisions can affect thousands of jobs and even the whole economy. Inside an organization, they are the ones who literally make the rules and enforce them. And the whole thing is structured as a hierarchy, that classic pyramid of authority that spells out exactly who reports to whom. It's the chain of command. All right, we've seen management as an action and as a team. Now let's do a hard pivot to a totally different way of thinking about it. Lens 3, management as a field of study, a specialized branch of knowledge. So from this angle, management is a formal academic discipline, just like engineering or medicine or law. It's not just something you do. It's something you can actually study.
It has its own principles, its own theories, its own best practices that can be taught in a classroom and learned from a book. Just like a doctor has to study anatomy and biology, a good manager studies things like organizational behavior and finance to understand how a business really works.
And this idea here is key. It's a systematized body of knowledge. What that means is it's not just a random collection of tips or gut feelings that one boss passes down to the next. No, it's an organized, structured, and formal field of study that you can actually build a career on. It has real academic rigor. And what's really fascinating is just how new this field is. I mean, compared to ancient disciplines like philosophy or mathematics, management as a formal study is basically a baby. But wow, its growth has been absolutely explosive. Today, it's a huge subject in the social sciences, and getting into top business schools is incredibly competitive.
And just like any other mature discipline, management has its own specialties. You can decide to go deep on financial management, which is all about the numbers. Or you could focus on marketing management, all about the customer. There's personnel management, or human resources, which is all about the people. And then there's production management, which is about how stuff actually gets made. Each one of these is a massive field all on its own. And that brings us to our fourth and final lens, which kind of brings us full circle back to what managers actually do day to day. Lens 4 looks at management as a system or a process, a continuous, never-ending cycle of functions that makes the whole organization go.
So here's the big takeaway for this lens. Management is a process. It's a series of interconnected steps that are done in a specific, systematic way to turn inputs, like those 5 M's we talked about earlier, into outputs, like a finished product or a profit. The absolute best analogy is a recipe, right? To bake a cake, you have to follow the steps in order. You mix the dry ingredients, then the wet, you combine them, you bake for a specific time. You can't just dump it all in a bowl and hope for the best. Well, management is that systematic recipe for a successful business. And here are the core steps in that recipe. It all kicks off with planning, figuring out where you're going and setting your goals. Next up is organizing. That's arranging all your resources to help you meet those goals. Then comes staffing, getting the right people in the right seats. Fourth is directing, which is all about leading and motivating your team. And finally, you have controlling. That's monitoring your progress, checking your results, and making adjustments as you go. It's a continuous loop that just keeps going. And it is so critical to remember that this whole thing is, at its core, a social process. Yes, there are spreadsheets and plans and data involved, but its ultimate purpose, the real work, is guiding and motivating people. The process only works because of and through the human beings who are actually doing the work. So this process view tells us 4 really important things about management. First, it's universal. Every single organization needs it, whether it's a hospital, a software company, or a coffee shop. Second, it's continuous. It never ever stops. Third, it's iterative. The functions actually repeat and overlap within each other all the time. And fourth, as we just said, it's fundamentally social, because at the end of the day, it's all about people. Okay, we've officially looked through all 4 of our lenses. We've seen management as an action, as a team, as a field of study, and as a process. So now it's time to put it all together and finally see the complete picture. Which brings us right back to where we started, that big fundamental question. After all of this, after looking at it from every angle, what is management really? And here is the complete answer. Management isn't just one of these things, it's all of them, all at the exact same time. It is a goal-oriented activity that is performed by a specific group of people who are guided by the principles of an academic discipline and to execute their work through a continuous process. You absolutely need all 4 lenses to see the whole thing clearly. This invisible architecture holding everything together, but it's kind of hard to pin down. Is it a science? Is it an art? Is it a profession? Well, we're about to dissect it and see what truly makes it tick. So we're going to start by asking, is management a science? Then we'll flip the script and ask, well, is it an art? Then we'll see how those two actually come together. After that, we'll put it to the test. Is it a true profession? And finally, we'll unpack its 12 core characteristics before we deliver the final verdict. Okay, first up, is there some kind of secret formula to management? A set of unbreakable laws that, if you follow them, guarantee success. Or is everyone just winging it? Let's dig into the evidence. And you know what? It's kind of surprising, but management actually checks a lot of the boxes for being a science. First off, it has a systematized body of knowledge. That's just a fancy way of saying it's not just a bunch of random ideas. There are core principles you can actually study. Second, this knowledge was built through real-world observation and experiments. And third, and this is a big one, it's all about cause and effect. Take a principle like dual subordination. Sounds complicated, but it's simple. If you have two bosses barking different orders at you, what's the predictable result? Confusion, chaos. That's a cause and effect relationship, just like in science. And finally, these fundamental concepts are universal. They apply in a giant tech company just as much as they do at the corner bakery.
But here's the crucial twist. Management isn't like physics or chemistry. It's a social science. See, a chemist in a lab can predict a reaction with 100% accuracy because chemicals don't have bad days. A manager, on the other hand, is a lot more like a meteorologist. The meteorologist has all the scientific data and the models, but they're trying to predict a wildly complex and chaotic system, the weather. A manager is dealing with something even more unpredictable, human beings. So yeah, it's a science, but it's a science of probabilities, not absolute certainties.
Okay, so management is a soft science, but that doesn't feel like the whole story, does it? I mean, we've all known managers who've read every book, they know all the theories, but they just can't inspire a team. They lack that magic. And that, my friends, is where the art comes in.
This is where the true artist in the manager really shines. I want you to picture a master chef. That chef knows the science of cooking. They understand heat, chemistry, all of it. But what makes them brilliant isn't just the science. It's the application. It's the personal skill, the unique style, the creativity. It's the art. Management is exactly the same. Two managers with the exact same team and the exact same resources will get completely different results. It's the art of taking those raw ingredients, people, ideas, resources, and creating something extraordinary.
And just like any great artist, a manager is forged in the fire of practice. You can't learn to paint from a book, and you can't learn to lead from one either. Mastery is a journey. You learn the theory, sure, but then you have to apply it in the real world. You have to face challenges, make tough calls, and through that constant pressure, you start to develop an intuition, a kind of sixth sense for making the right move at the right time. That's how you turn pressure into performance. So we've seen the scientist and the manager, and we've seen the artist. But which one is it? Well, that's the wrong question. The real power, the real magic of management, lies in the fusion of these two things. This quote just nails it perfectly. Science without art is fruitless. Think about it. That's all the knowledge in the world with no skill to apply it. It goes nowhere. And art without science is blind. That's all intuition and gut feeling, but you're just driving without a map. Maybe straight towards a cliff. You absolutely need both to get where you're going. So it's not a choice. It's not one or the other. It's a partnership. The very best managers are a perfect blend of both. They use the logical, scientific side of their brain and the creative, artistic side, working together in perfect unison. So it's an art and a science. Okay, but does that make it a profession in the same way we think of a doctor or a lawyer? Let's put it under the microscope.
Let's do a little head-to-head comparison. Management versus a classic profession, like medicine. Specialized knowledge? Check, both have it. A service motive? Check, both are supposed to serve a greater good. But this is where it gets tricky. Formal, mandatory education? For a doctor? Absolutely. For a manager? Nope, it's optional. What about a governing body, like a medical board that can revoke your license? Management doesn't have one. And a legally binding code of conduct, like the Hippocratic Oath? Again, no. So the verdict? Management has definitely emerged as a profession, but it doesn't tick all the classic boxes. Not yet, anyway.
We've explored the what of management. Now, let's get to its DNA. We're about to break down the 12 fundamental building blocks, the very essence of what management is and what it does, no matter where you find it. All right, let's fire through these. First, it is absolutely goal-oriented. A manager's job isn't to keep people busy. It's to hit a specific target. Second, it's universal. Whether you're running a massive tech company or a local food truck, the principles are the same. Third, it's a group activity. A manager is like an orchestra conductor. They're not playing an instrument, they're making sure everyone's individual talent combines into something beautiful. And fourth, it's a system of authority. There has to be a clear chain of command so everyone knows who calls the shots.
Moving on, it's a social process. Management deals with human beings, their motivations, their fears, their ambitions. It's also a dynamic function. A good manager is always adapting, like when the whole world suddenly shifted to remote work. Management is also a distinct entity. It's not just a part of marketing or finance, it's a unique skill set all its own. And finally, it's intangible. You can't see or touch management, but you can absolutely feel its presence or its absence. It's like a grandmaster strategy in chess, invisible, but incredibly powerful.
Management is an integrating force, the glue that creates synergy, making the team's output greater than what individuals could do alone. It's profoundly multidisciplinary. A manager is a jack of all trades, drawing on psychology, economics, and sociology. It's inherently creative. It's the spark that takes a pile of raw resources and turns them into something amazing. And to bring it all home, the grand synthesis of our entire journey, it is both an art and a science. Here it is, the grand unification theory of management. It is the art of applying the science of organized principles to creatively fuse a team's efforts, guiding them with purpose towards a common goal. It's the perfect blend of logic, creativity, and humanity. That, in a nutshell, is management.
Let me ask you something. What does an orchestra conductor actually do? I mean, think about it. They don't play a single instrument, right? They don't make a single sound themselves. And yet, without them, a world-class orchestra packed with brilliant musicians, well, it would just be noise. That conductor, that is the perfect metaphor for management.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to break down the ultimate mission of management, then we'll get into why it matters so much, its critical impact. And after that, we'll dissect the command chain that makes it all work. We're talking about the architects at the top, the bridge builders in the middle, and the frontline commanders who get it all done.
All right, let's jump right in. To really get a grip on management, we have to start with the big why. What's its purpose? What is it fundamentally trying to achieve? What's the end game here?
Okay, first up, and you could argue this is the most foundational piece of the whole puzzle, profitability. I mean, think of it as the bedrock. An organization has to earn enough money to cover its costs, to invest in its own future, and this is huge, to give a reasonable return to the people who put their own money on the line to get it started. Right? Without that, none of the other stuff we're about to talk about is even possible. And this analogy is just perfect. Think of profit as the oxygen for a business. Seriously, this isn't about greed, not at all. It's purely about survival. It's the oxygen a business breathes. Without it, no salaries, no new gear, no growth. The whole thing just grinds to a halt. It's the fuel that makes the entire engine run.
But look, survival isn't the goal, right? It's just the starting line. Real management is aiming for prosperity and growth. And this isn't just about getting bigger, it's about getting better. It means constantly, relentlessly pushing for better performance, creating an environment where people can do their absolute best work, and designing systems that squeeze the most results out of the least effort. It's kind of like a master chef who's just obsessed with efficiency. They use every single part of an ingredient, nothing goes to waste, to create this incredible meal. That's exactly what great management does with its resources: people, money, materials. It blends them all together perfectly to hit peak productivity.
So, profitability keeps the lights on, and efficiency makes the engine hum. But what happens when the road ahead takes an unexpected turn? The business world is never static, right? It's this chaotic sea of changing customer tastes, new tech popping up, and shifting markets. So a huge objective for management isn't just to react to change, but to actually drive innovation. They have to make sure the organization can handle whatever the future decides to throw at it. This is why a great manager is like the captain of a big sailing ship. They can't control the wind or the currents, those are the external market forces, but what they can do and what they must do is constantly adjust the sails to harness those forces and steer the ship safely and quickly to where it needs to go. They make sure the company doesn't get left behind or, totally swamped by the waves of change.
Now this next objective, this is a huge shift in focus, and you could argue it's the most important one of all. Management has to understand a fundamental truth. Organizations don't build things, people do. So a critical goal has to be attracting the best talent out there, and then, and this is even more important, building an environment where that talent can really, truly flourish. We're talking training, encouragement, and real opportunities to grow. Yeah, this is all about shifting from being a boss to being a coach. See, a coach doesn't just stand there and tell players what to do. They provide the training, they lay out the strategy, and they create opportunities for every single person on the team to sharpen their skills and reach their absolute full potential. At the end of the day, a company is only as good as its people, period. Okay, so for an organization to be really effective, it needs two things that might sound like they're opposites, but they're actually two sides of the same coin: discipline and morale. You really can't have one without the other. Discipline, setting clear expectations and responsibilities. That gives people the structure they need to succeed. And that success, when you boost it with motivation and recognition, that's what builds incredible morale.
It's like being a coach who's also the team's biggest cheerleader. You have to set clear rules for the game, so everyone knows their position and what's expected of them. That's the discipline part. But you also have to be on the sidelines, hyping everyone up, keeping spirits high, with both financial rewards and simple recognition. That's how you create a winning atmosphere.
When you strip away everything else, all the meetings, the reports, the strategies, what is management, really? It boils down to one thing: a constant series of decisions. From tiny little daily choices to massive company-altering strategic bets, the quality of these decisions, well, it literally determines the future of the entire company. So the objective is simple to say, but so hard to do. Make the right decisions with the right information at the right time.
And that's why a manager has to be like a chess master. A chess master can't just react to what their opponent just did. No way. They have to be thinking several moves ahead, anticipating challenges, and positioning their pieces for long-term success. Every single choice has a ripple effect across the entire board.
In the world we live in today, this hyper-connected world, perception really is reality. How a company is seen by its customers, by investors, by the public, it matters immensely. So a core objective of management is to proactively build and maintain a strong, positive public image. You have to realize that your reputation is one of your most valuable assets.
So what's the secret to a great reputation? Well, it isn't built with flashy marketing campaigns. An organization's reputation is more like a garden. It needs constant, careful tending to flourish. And the best way to do that? Just run the business really well. When your operations are efficient and smooth, that naturally builds trust, and the quality of your work speaks for itself.
And this brings us to an objective that kind of ties everything else together, and it's one that directly impacts all of us as consumers. See, management has a responsibility not just to the company, but to the community it serves. And that responsibility is to provide products and services of a higher quality at reasonable prices. And that's not magic. It's the direct result of nailing all the other objectives we just talked about.
Yeah, the ultimate goal here is to be like a Michelin star chef who somehow figures out how to serve a world-class 5-star meal, but at the price of a local diner. How on earth do you do that? By being ruthlessly efficient, by eliminating every single scrap of waste in your process. That's how you reduce production costs and pass those incredible savings on to the customer.
Okay, so those are the core objectives. Now that we know the mission, let's talk about the why. Why is achieving all this so incredibly important? What's the real-world impact of doing management well?
Look, the impact of great management is just massive. It's like this chemical reaction that transforms a bunch of individuals all with their own goals into a unified team all pulling in the same direction. It takes raw resources, people, money, materials, and blends them with peak efficiency, cutting out all the waste. And that efficiency isn't just about making a profit. It's about surviving in a world full of tough competition. But here's where it gets really powerful. By making quality products at low costs, good management literally raises a society's standard of living. And by growing the business, it becomes this engine for employment, creating jobs and helping people build their lives. I mean, this isn't just business theory. It's a real catalyst for societal progress. So you've got this complex machine with all these ambitious goals. The big question is, how is it actually structured to get all this stuff done? How is the work organized?
Well, typically, you'll see it organized into a 3-tiered pyramid. At the very top, you've got the architect. In the middle, you have the bridge builders, and holding it all up at the base are the frontline commanders. Each of these levels has a distinct and absolutely vital role to play in the whole mission.
All right, let's start at the very top of that pyramid, with the visionaries. These are the architects who are designing the entire blueprint for the company.
So what are these architects? We're talking the board of directors, the CEO. What do they actually do all day? Well, the key is to understand what they don't do. They are not getting bogged down in the day-to-day stuff. Nope. Their eyes are fixed way out on the horizon. They're scanning the environment for threats and opportunities, setting the grand strategy for the next 5-10 years, designing the basic structure of the organization, and providing that overall leadership that gives everyone else direction and a sense of purpose.
Okay, let's move down one level to the absolutely crucial middle managers. If the folks at the top are the architects, these people are the bridge builders. They connect that grand vision to the on-the-ground reality. These are your department heads, your production manager, sales manager, finance manager. Their number one job is to be expert translators. They take those high-level, sometimes pretty abstract strategic plans from the top, and they translate them into concrete actions and goals that their teams can actually execute. They monitor performance to make sure the plan is on track. They work with other departments to keep everything in sync. And, this is huge, they're responsible for training and developing the next level of leaders. They are the essential link holding the whole chain together.
And finally, we get down to the foundation of the pyramid, lower-level management. These are your supervisors, your foremen, the frontline commanders who are right there in the trenches every single day.
Now, these managers are unique and they are so incredibly important for one main reason. They are the only level of management that deals directly with the non-managerial workforce, the people actually doing the work. They're right there on the ground, planning the day-to-day tasks, assigning jobs, supervising operations, and solving problems as they happen, in real time. This makes them the eyes and ears of the entire organization. They're that critical two-way communication channel, sending feedback about problems and opportunities up the chain and cascading directions and plans from the top down to the front line.